if self-sabotage is a myth.
It's not really sabotage, it's feedback to let you know you're pursuing something that's not really the very highest priority. Because if you strive for that which is unobtainable and try to avoid that which is unavoidable, you're going to feel disempowered because you can't do it. The polarities are feedback mechanisms guiding us back to authenticity. True self-worth is the synthesis and synchronicity of the elevated and depressed self-esteems, the pride and the shames, the success and the failures. Your hierarchy of values dictates your perception, decisions, and actions, and your identity revolves around what you value most. You only react to people on the outside that represent a part of you on the inside that you haven't owned, and you only resent them because they're reminding you of something you feel ashamed about that you're hiding from yourself, and they're come into your life to help you see it. They're your teacher, not your enemy. They're actually the guide for you to uncover the part of you that you haven't loved yet. But we don't see it because we're trapped in the moral hypocrisies and the polarities of the amygdala. At the level of the essence of the soul, nothing's missing. So I'm a whole being, and I don't need to get rid of any part of myself, or I don't need to find some part that I think is missing. It's not. It's there.
Ryan Holiday has a book, Ego is the Enemy. I disagree, but what are your thoughts on the integration of the ego rather than the demonization of the ego? If self-sabotage is a myth and we don't really sabotage ourselves, what is self-sabotage in your own vernacular?
Each individual lives by a set of priorities, a set of values, things that are most to least important to them. Whenever they set goals and objectives that are aligned and congruent with what they value most, which is their most intrinsic value, they spontaneously act. The blood glucose and oxygen goes into the medial prefrontal cortex, and there's spontaneous action potentials that spontaneously act. They don't require external motivation there. But as they progressively go down the list of values to lower and lower priorities, they require more extrinsic motivation to get them to do things. So as they go really low, they go, I procrastinate, I hesitate, I keep frustrating, I'm not doing this, because there's no spontaneity. They have to have an external carrot in front of them. So if they stick to the very highest priority, they do extraordinary things. They're very effective and efficient at getting massive things accomplished. But many times people meet people that they admire, look up to, and because the way value structures are in society, whoever you look up to, you tend to minimize yourself to when you look up to them and exaggerate them. You tend to inject some of their values into your life and cloud the clarity of your own and attempt to be doing things that aren't really your highest priorities. And you think, I ought to, I should, I'm supposed to, I got to, I have to, I need to do this, but I'm not spontaneously doing it. I keep procrastinating, hesitating, and frustrating. So you think you're sabotaging because you're trying to be somebody other than yourself. Your very highest value is what your ontological identity revolves around, and your teleological purpose revolves around, and your area of expertise epistemologically. So you're going to master that area and self-actualize in that highest value, but anytime you get lower ones, you're going to get symptoms of what you think is sabotage to guide you back to what is priority. And so it's not really sabotage, it's feedback to let you know you're pursuing something that's not really the very highest priority in your dynamic. I see this in business individuals. They say that their highest value is business, but it's not all the business. It's only certain portions of the business. For instance, in my case, I've been internationally speaking for a long time. My highest value is teaching and researching and writing and traveling. If I'm doing those things, I'm inspired daily.
Yeah.
But if I had to do the administration and marketing and sales and financials and things like that, I would not be inspired. Those are not the areas of business. So sometimes we think our highest value is business, and then we are drained doing the lower priority things, and we keep not doing those things because they're not the highest priorities in that we really are dedicated to. So I hire people. If you're not delegating to lower priority activities to people who have it high on their values, you're not going to be free to do what is highest on your values where you'll excel. So sabotage is a feedback mechanism guiding you back to authenticity, your highest value, so you can stick to the thing that's most important intrinsically instead of trying to be somebody you're not. trying to be second at being somebody else. It's wiser to be first at being you.
The authentic map to find what we really love. I enjoy so much this quote that my teammate sent me. You said, love is the synchronicity and synthesis of all complementary opposites, the unity of opposites that, is it Heraclitus described?
Heraclitus,
yes. So this complementary balancing of opposites, this seems to be a very fundamental, basic human understanding, but yet it's been hidden for a very long time, this law.
Well, in the almost 6th century BC, Heraclitus, however you want to say it, he came up with the idea that there was a logos, a hidden order in the apparent chaos in our perceptions. So let's put information theory, Claude Shannon's work, on top of him. By the way, Heraclitus impacted Schrodinger and the Schrodinger equation in quantum mechanics. He impacted Einstein. He impacted Newton. He impacted Max Planck. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Hegel, the dialectic. He has a massive influence on many, many great thinkers, Jung's teachings. But information theory was also impacted by it. Claude Shannon says that entropy, the tendency to go to disorder, is missing information. And the tendency to go to the hidden order, hidden because it's not in our awareness initially, is reclaiming that information. So if let's say you meet somebody, you're a guy and you meet this pretty girl, and at first you're a little infatuated and you're conscious of the upsides of the attraction and you have an amygdala response with an impulse to seek it out and you want to consume it like prey. And you're conscious of the upsides, but you're unconscious of the downsides. The unconsciousness is missing information. So now you have an impulse to seek this person out. But as the days and weeks and months go on in that relationship, you start to discover some of the downsides that you were blind to initially. And eventually you come to realize that there's things you like and dislike, the positives and the negatives. In any relationship, you eventually discover there's both. When you're able to see both and not be infatuated with one and blind to the downsides, when you're able to, you start to love the individual as the whole. So that's when you're able to see both sides of them simultaneously, which is the synthesis and synchronicity of complementary opposites. So the same thing if we meet people that we resent. We are conscious of the downside and unconscious of the upside. But sometimes the people we resent are the catalyst for us to grow. They're the challengers that made us innovate and come up with new ideas and become independent. And so we eventually discover the upsides to what we thought was the downsides only. When we finally see both sides simultaneously, where you're able to see both sides, you get to love somebody. And what's interesting is our epistemological area of mastery occurs where we have that awareness. When we're blind to one side, we're distracted. Anything we infatuate occupies space and time in our mind and runs us. Anything we resent occupies space and time and runs us. We have intrusive thoughts that distract us. It makes insomnia, trying to sleep at night, fantasies, nightmares. But the second we see both sides and center ourselves and are not distracted by the polarizations of perception, we're present. In that state, we feel love for somebody. We're not putting them on pedestals. We're not putting them in pits. We're putting them in our heart. And so I define love as the synthesis and synchronicity of opposites, the unity of opposites that Heraclitus was describing. Because when we see both sides, there's no missing information. We understand them and know them. We have gnosis, awareness, full awareness. Before that, we have ignorance. We're unaware of half of it. So ignorance or unconsciousness or blindness or asleepness or unawareness or unawakeness or in the dark are many ways of describing that missing information.
It seems to me that this whole game, this whole life game, is a game of perception, a game where we're either seeing things as they actually are or seeing things through a shattered glass, if you will, based on our own amalgamation of what has occurred for us in childhood, in utero, even if you look at ancestral trauma. So there's many converging forces that come together to make Josh or to make John or to make any of us. Yet the only way that I've seen it, and I'm curious how you feel about this, The only way I've seen life really produce beautiful fruit is when I can get clear on the way in which I project my wounds onto the people that I love. And from that clarity, I get peace, I get freedom, I get the zest of life itself. But it can be so challenging for me at times to get clear on A, what is my projection that I'm seeing things through? B, how does one go through the inventory process, emotional and mental inventory process, to be clear on what those are? And then C, how do I live from a place of freedom? It seems to me, John, that the game here is perception.
Well, that's the cornerstone of everything I do. So if we perceive somebody, the way our amygdala functions, it assigns valency to stimuli, and it basically labels something a prey or predator. If it supports our values, it's prey. If it challenges our values and our perception, it's predator. So it causes an impulse to seek or an instinct to avoid, and therefore we're externally driven. We're externally run by these perceptions. We call that reality, the phenomenological reality based on our stimuli that we have from this outer world. If we ask different questions when we meet this person we dislike or resent or admire and infatuate with, if we ask the question, what specific trait, action or inaction, do I perceive this individual displaying or demonstrating that I dislike, despise, or resent, or hate, or want to avoid the most? And narrow it down. What exactly is it that they're doing? The actions that they're doing or inactions that they're doing that you're judging. If you identify that, the next question that's wise to ask is, go to a moment, John, where and when you perceive yourself displaying or demonstrating the same specific trait, action, or inaction that you despise most. At first, you're going to be too proud to admit what you see in them inside you. And you're going to have deflective awareness, and you're going to disown parts, and you're going to have dismemberment. You're not owning that part of yourself. And disempowerment, because you're going to want to change them relative to your pride and project your values onto them and try to make them to live in your values, which will be non-sustainable futility. But the moment you actually go and identify where and when you do it, who'd you do it to, who perceives you that way, and be accountable to look again and again and again, until you own that trait 100% quantitatively and qualitatively. As it says in Romans 2:1 in the New Testament, beware of judging others, for you do the same thing. But if you look carefully, you only react to people on the outside that represent a part of you on the inside that you haven't owned. And you only resent them because they're reminding you of something you feel ashamed about that you're hiding from yourself, and they're come into your life to help you see it. So when you actually go and reflect and see it, you realize that they're your teacher, not your enemy. They're not somebody to avoid, they're somebody to appreciate. Instead of putting them in the pit, you're now putting them in your heart. Now, if you go and do another step, go to a moment where and when you perceive that individual displaying the trait you despised and disliked. And in that moment, how did it benefit you? What were the upsides that you were blind to, that you're unconscious of? What are the upsides to it? If you find that and don't stop, and there's benefits spiritually, there's benefits intellectually, there's benefits in business, there's benefits in finance, there's benefits in relationship, socially, physically. There's benefits in all areas. Whatever is most meaningful, there's actually a catalyst for what it's offering you to help you fulfill what's most meaningful. If you make yourself accountable to see not just the one side, but see both sides and come up with the upsides, which your intuition is attempting to guide you to do on a daily basis, you become fully conscious. You're not missing information. And you realize that they're not your enemy whatsoever. They're actually the guide for you to uncover the part of you that you haven't loved yet, that you're still judging inside yourself because of some moral hypocrisy that you've subordinated to. If you go in there and do that, and you don't stop until you see the advantages equaling the disadvantages, the positives equaling the negatives, and balance the equation where it's neither positive nor negative, it's just a synthesis and synchronicity of opposites, you'll feel love for somebody you didn't know you could love. And you'll get to have love for yourself in that moment. And that's just two of the questions you could ask yourself. I have about 80 questions that I ask, and when they're done, there's nothing there except thank you.
You are the question master. I was sharing with you before we recorded that I went through your values hierarchy that you have online. It's on the screen right now for y'all that are watching. And it was incredible. I mean, the depth, the complexity, but the synthesis of it being something that I can actually understand at the end of it was really beautiful. What came up for me was pride. Pride, you've said that pride is the exaggeration of who you are. This exaggeration, is it fear? What exactly is this exaggeration through the vehicle of pride? It seems like pride blocks me and all of us from so many beautiful things in life. The exaggeration.
We have an inherent homeostatic, intuitive feedback system in our brain. And pride is the assumption that we have done an action that has contributed more benefits than drawbacks, more positives than negatives, more gains and losses, more advantages and disadvantages to someone. And the moment we do, it means we're unconscious of the downsides. In the central limit theorem, no matter what we do, the consequences all even out into a bell curve over time. So there's no real things. You really have to have a narrow mind and a very short awareness to be able to see things polarized, one side or the other, positive or negative, really. And so over time, everything you do has advantages and disadvantages, if you study consequentialism. But what we do is with our narrow-mindedness, we have moral hypocrisies that we've subordinated to from mothers, fathers, preachers, teachers, conventions, traditions, mores, etc. And we've incorporated those in our life and attempted to get rid of half of some part and try to be only one-sided. Remember what the Buddha said, the desire for that which is unobtainable and the desire to avoid that which is unavoidable is a source of human suffering. So if we're trying to get to be one-sided individuals, we'll have futility. And many people have subordinated themselves to that idea and think that perfection is one-sidedness when the perfection is the two sides simultaneously, the benefit of both sides. So when we're proud, we're making an assumption that we have done something according to some moral hypocrisy that we've subordinated to, more advantage and disadvantage. But if we look carefully, somewhere in the world, as Michael Montaigne described, there's a complete opposite morality. You know, in the Middle East, older men are sometimes with young girls, 12 and even younger. And that's not uncommon in that culture. That's not an evil thing in their culture, where you go to prison in America for that. So you go, well, wait, you're accustomed that's a bad thing. Well, over there, it's a good thing. So we have to broaden our awareness and have a global view or an intercontinental view to really transcend some of the mores that we've been indoctrinated by sometimes religious or political means. So actually taking the time to see both sides simultaneously liberates us from it. But pride has a moral licensing effect associated with it. The moment you do something you're proud of, you automatically, unconsciously give yourself permission to do something you're ashamed of. You go out and work out, get your abs in shape and get your chest up and get your arms really looking good. And you give yourself permission to eat more, drink more, and have more chocolate that night, as an example. And then if you go out and you overdo the other side and shame, where you're assuming that you did something by the moral hypocrisies, there are more drawbacks than benefits, you then the next morning get up and you work out to compensate for it. You pigged out the night before, so you go to work out. So anytime you go into pride, it's a facade. It's not you, it's an imposter. It's an exaggeration of yourself. Anytime you go into shame, it's not you. Another minimization, imposter syndrome. And both of them have feedback mechanism to guide you to the other side, to bring yourself back into the whole where you have the synthesis, synchronicity of opposites, and you get to love yourself. That's the authentic you. The exaggerated pride and the minimized shame is not you. Now, let's put those together. If you meet somebody and you put them on a pedestal and you minimize yourself and feel ashamed that you're not living up to what you see in them, you're seeing an imposter in them and you're seeing an imposter in you. And it's teaching you with the symptoms, trying to live in their values, the futility of it. And so you're getting automatically the feedback that doesn't work. It's not authentic. There's a social feedback from everyone around us. They will automatically create a symptomatology in our physiology to wake us up to make sure we go back to being ourselves. Every symptom in our body, every symptom in our social interactions is guiding us back to authenticity. So if we minimize ourselves and try to live in their values, we'll be frustrated, and that won't work. And if we exaggerate ourselves and look down on people and try to get them to live in our values, it'll be frustrating, non-sustainable, and futile, and that will eventually teach us to stop projecting our disowned parts onto people and start to love people. And so everything is trying to teach us the synthesis, synchronicity of opposites. I really believe that everything that goes in our lives is trying to teach us how to love ourselves and other people, ultimately.
If you've ever blown up your life for no logical reason, congratulations. Your biology works. You're not broken. You're just running an old pattern. After 10 years of podcasting and interviewing 800 plus of the sharpest minds and deepest hearts on planet Earth, I built something simple to help you interrupt these patterns fast. I kept running personally into the same stuff, and audience members would write to me and say, Josh, I'm dealing with the same core 3 things, which are expressed through emotional epigenetics that are our emotional patterns, our unconscious beliefs, and our environment. This self-liberation blueprint is a free training where you get clear on how these 3 areas are blocking your life, and in 10 days, you can move from being stuck and distorted on the inside to clear and on purpose on the outside. The Self-Liberation Blueprint is a 10-day jumpstart that's perfect for the human being that feels stuck, but they just can't figure out why. Now, I built this with no smoke and mirrors. I know in our world, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors when it comes to personal growth and spiritual development. I built this with 24 years of my own health, wellness, and personal development life experience. So I can save you money and save you time and start getting your results as quickly as possible. On your first day, you're gonna go right into a self-assessment where we know exactly where you are and exactly where you get to be. We're gonna take you through a dream vision process and specific breath work to create your life vision that you desire in the future as if it's here right now. All of this is free because I'm here to give it to you as a mentor in the same way that my mentors gave it to me. It is purely just my gift to you. You also get free access to the Liberated Life Tribe, a community of people like you and I that are actually doing the inner work instead of just pretending that they're fine. By the time you're done, you're gonna know exactly where you are in your wellness pentagon, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and financially, and you're gonna have a map, a mindful action plan to move from clarity instead of distortion. This is not therapy for people that are broken. You're not broken. You're just bio-energetically burdened. And I'm here to tell you that removing these burdens is possible. And I believe you can do it. You don't need fixing. You just get to have a clear starting point and a plan that actually works with your biology. If you're ready to move forward with your life without forcing it, join me inside the Self-Liberation Blueprint by heading over to liberatedlife.com. Come join us. Once one is clear on their values, who they are, what they stand for, what their gift is, and how they're giving it to the world, what would be a healthy expression or a healthy mechanism for pride? When would pride be something that's self-affirming?
I have no interest in pride, none.
Okay.
I'm interested in gratitude.
Gratitude.
Gratitude for what is as it is. As the Tat Sat in the Gita said, Tat Sat, as it is. That's what actualization is. Pride is basically assuming that you did some sort of positive thing, and that's going to humble you. Pride before the fall. It's a hubris. So I have no interest in pride, no interest in shame. Do I have them? Absolutely. Do I have a desire to have pride? No. Do I have a desire to contribute and have sustainable, fair exchange where I leave a mark in the world? Which is, the word ambition means a condition of both-sidedness, where both sides are there. The positives and the negatives are there. That's what ambidextrous means, ambition. So when you can see both sides, you keep yourself centered. You're more likely. If you start to think you're successful, you're on your way down, as Keo from Coca-Cola Company used to say. And if you think you're a failure, you're on your way up, because failure makes you go back to higher priority things, and success makes you give yourself a break and makes you go do lower priority things. So neither one of those are my interest. I'm interested in being a man on a mission, and I don't want to be distracted by success or failure or pride and shame. They're the illusion, the imposters, as Kipling said.
This is so good. So earlier in your journey, it's been 50 plus years now, but earlier in your journey, coming from, inspiration from Paul Bragg and the tent in Hawaii that we talked about in our other episode, has there been a moment or multiple moments where you realized that pride had become a master for you in some way? And if so, how did you transcend that to get to the gratitude, which is where you are at now?
I don't think it's hard for anybody to eventually see that if they're proud, they get humbled. Just to do it with your wife. You come home cocky. I'll share an interesting story. When I was in practice years ago, some days I would have a lot of patience, have a lot of generated income, a lot of thank yous, a lot of feeling like, wow, I really did it today, right? But I would then get puffed up sometimes. And then I would be sometimes thinking, I'm pretty cool. I'm pretty amazing. Touch me, you'll heal kind of thing. And then I'd come home and my spouse would nail me, just bring me right back and down into authenticity.
Yeah.
Now, because at that time I was under the illusion that positive thinking had meaning, I was actually thinking I need to be positive all the time and people need to be positive and anybody else is toxic and this kind of thing. And I was in my 20s and at that time, 30 almost. But I realized that she, being, in a sense, critical, was actually helping me see what I wasn't seeing, making me get back in touch with who I was instead of this puffed up persona, this mask, the facade that I was wearing, the imposter, and exaggerating myself and blind. Because when I came home all puffed up, I was not thinking of my kids, not thinking of my wife, not thinking of my patient, I was thinking about me. And I was sort of narcissistic, projecting my wowness onto the world around me. So I also noticed that then we'd have a fight or something to humble me. And then I'd have sleepless night or something, and I'd go the next day and I'd have a down day. And then I would, go, whoa, what a day. And I felt like I forgot to do this and didn't do this. And I'd feel like a failure. And I'd come home and she'd lift me up and she'd rub my shoulders and do things and lift me up. And I was thinking, this is toxic. She's only supporting me when I'm down and knocking me down when I'm up. And I realized eventually that I was not governing myself. And so the world was having to. And your spouse is one of the great governors. That's why sometimes people pay consultants a lot of sums of money to find out what the wife has been telling them. So what was interesting is I decided to make a list of, on the days that I was puffed up, a list of questions to ask myself to bring myself back down. What patients' names did I overlook? What birthdays and anniversaries did I not mention? What staff did I not thank? What paperwork did I miss out on? I started asking humbling questions when I was proud, when I felt the symptoms of pride, and I'm thinking, I'm pretty special here. And I asked these questions, and I didn't stop asking questions until I got a tear of gratitude for the service, the ability to serve people, to be able to fulfill my mission, and to appreciate that I need to have sustainable, fair exchange with my customers, my staff, my spouse, anybody who's involved. They have to be on the same playing field. They can't be one above or below. Otherwise, you're in judgment. So I would calm myself down, and I'd do that before I'd drive home. And the second I was in my tear of gratitude, when I got home, I had this unbelievable wife waiting for me. It was like a non-local connection going on. And then if I had a really down day and I felt like, I asked a reverse set of questions. Who did I thank? What procedure did I do? And I lifted myself up. And I was keeping stats on my practice. And the second I started introducing the self-governing questions, the stability of my business became predictable. It was amazing. The volatilities of highs and lows calmed down because I was waiting for the external world to bring me down or bring me up from the volatilities like the stock market. And that, just like Buffett says, you buy into long-term holding, not the fluctuations, and you look for the intrinsic value. When I stuck with the intrinsic value and focused on my mission and not success or failure, because you get addicted to success, you fear failure. And you're sitting there letting the external world distract you from your perception of yourself. When I did that, my stabilized business was more stable and predictable, and there's less volatility, and my income was more stable, and my self-worth was more stable. The volatilities of the self-righteous, self-raunchous, elation and depression, and high and low self-esteem volatilities and vicissitudes stopped. I was able to stabilize myself. And then my executive center was governing my amygdala instead of my amygdala running my executive center. Systems 2 thinking, as described, was overruling systems 1, impulses and instincts and volatilities. So I found that pride, I have no interest in. Shame, no interest in. But being inspired, doing what I love, fulfilling a mission, making a contribution, not getting put on a pedestal or pit. If people put me on a pedestal, I humble myself right there. I said, you don't know. Talk to my girlfriend. My wife's passed away. Talk to my girlfriend. She'll tell you the downsides to calm that down, because you can get illusion. You can get people that are all infatuated with you and get illusioned by it and think you're something special. And that's your downfall. That's not going to help you.
I learned that early on, to never pedestal someone.
Don't put people on pedestals or pits. Put them in your heart.
I would have these massive, 10 times New York best-selling authors, people like you, where when I meet you now, I can just meet you and I can be with you for the human being.
Much wiser.
for the human being that you are. But earlier in my maturation process, I would pedestal certain doctors or pedestal people.
And then you'd find out that they're not who you thought.
And then I would find out that they put on their pants just like me and they go to the bathroom. So it was
as I just came here and did.
as it was this just relaxation of my ego. And this is the burning question that I have for you. That this Ryan Holiday has a book, and it's Ego is the Enemy. I disagree. I think that the unintegrated ego can be a fallacy. It can be a pitfall. But what are your thoughts and your education and your insight on the integration of the ego rather than the demonization of the ego?
I think that's right on, spot on. You have the pride is an exaggerated ego. It's a false ego.
Yeah.
Your shame is a minimized ego. And the synthesis and synchronicity of the complementation of these opposites, the unity of opposites, is the true ego. The true ego is not something to get rid of. You're never going to get rid of that. It's your being.
Yes.
It's your essence of being. What's interesting, Aristotle described that in his old writings on the virtues and the golden mean between the excess and deficiency of behavior. Same thing. So true self-worth is the synthesis and synchronicity of the elevated and depressed self-esteems, the pride and the shames, the success and the failures, the polarities of elation or depression. I have no interest. The polarities are feedback mechanisms guiding us back to authenticity. So I don't have a desire to have success. I gave that up 41 years ago. I quit seeking success. My publisher and I had a big difference on that one time. They wanted to label one of my books the Secrets of Success or whatever. And I said, I'd rather call it The Secrets of Fulfillment. All my references are that. Fulfillment means filling full the mind. Not having emptiness and konoma, as the Gnostics say, but pleroma, fullness, where you're not missing some part. You have everything there. I'm not a nice person. I'm not a mean person. Those are personas. I'm a human being with a set of values. You support me. I'm nice as a pussycat. You challenge me. I can be mean as a tiger. So I'm a whole being, and I don't need to get rid of any part of myself, or I don't need to find some part that I think that's missing. It's not. It's there. The only reason I think it's missing is because I'm comparing myself to somebody else with a different set of values and expecting myself to be demonstrating that behavior in their values. But nothing's missing in us. At the level of the essence of the soul, nothing's missing. At the level of the existence of the senses, things appear to be missing. And it's those things that appear to be missing, the things we're too proud or too humble to admit that we see in others, but we don't see in ourselves. That's why owning the traits of the greats, the heroes and the villains, helps you awaken your power in life, as Machiavelli is described, and even Nietzsche.
You mentioned Aristotle. One of my most loved quotes from Aristotle is he says, nature abhors a vacuum, which I completely relate to. Anytime I'm in resistance to what life is actually presenting forward for me, that is the vacuum that I'm trying to fight. And nature will always win, in my opinion. What arises in you from both educational and intellectual perspective, but also a lived experience perspective, when you hear Aristotle's teachings about that nature abhors the vacuum? What does that mean to you?
Well, the vacuum is another kind of term for, even though they know in the quantum world that there's nothing there, it's just a quantum field fluctuations, the vacuum. Even space and time are really just fluctuations. But the vacuum is the disowned part. If you're too humble to admit what you see in others that you admire, you have a missing part. You have an emptiness. You have a void, a vacuum. If you are too proud to admit what you see in somebody inside you, you have a void, an emptiness. So anytime you judge, you have emptiness. You have a void. And nature doesn't want that. So it's going to keep driving you, and it's going to keep making you pursue and attract events to fill that void, to eventually teach you to own the parts you've been disowning so you can have fullness, because the fullness is already present. But you're unwilling to see it because you're too proud or too humble to admit it.
I think that just hit everybody in the heart who's with us right now, because so much that we resist, to quote Napoleon Hill, what we resist persists. But yet these lessons keep coming around for me and for all of us. The lesson continues to be put right in our face until we actually learn the lesson. And I believe, I'm curious what you believe, I believe the lesson that I was brought here to learn is unconditional love for Josh and for others. And it is a damn hard lesson at times.
Well, Socrates said, I know nothing. They considered him the most knowledgeable man, but he knew nothing. Why? because no matter how much you know, the amount of what's unknown, the mysteries of the unknown far exceed the known. The known is finite. The unknown is infinite, or perceived to be infinite. So that means the vastness of the unknown keeps us on a journey of discovering the next mystery, the next thing we have missing in our awareness. So we're going to go and we're going to have a moment of illumination, a moment of full consciousness, a moment of grace, a moment of unconditional love, because we realize there's nothing missing in our awareness, and we're fully conscious. We're awake. We're enlightened. But the moment we do, we go on to the next illusion. And that next illusion, that we get into our judgments again. And so I use this analogy because sometimes when I'm particularly in India, I get this impression. There's a tendency for people to think there's a guru that's all-knowing out there. I'm the iconoclast in that respect. I've met a lot of great gurus, very aware people, but they're just human beings with awareness of what they know. There's a infinitude of what they don't know, no matter how much they know. And so it's wiser to live with holy curiosity and continue to expand your awareness than to assume that you know with pride, because you just stopped your growth. You're on your way down. So in my case, I'd like to think of it as that whatever I know, tomorrow is going to bring me something new that I don't know. And with that unknown, that missing information, I'm going to react. I'll be in my amygdala and I'll react until I eventually have knowledge again, gnosis, and then I'll be illuminated again. So I'm going to be going through moments of unconditional love, and then I'll get promoted to my next illusion. And then I'll eventually discover the two sides simultaneous of that, and then I'll get promoted to the next illusion. So that's why take no credit, take no blame, just keep focused on Chief A, and the name of the game is thank you, I love you. It's unconditional. There is an unconditional hidden order in the universe that we get a glimpse of periodically in our life, but we don't sustain that 24 hours a day because we would stop growing.
When I was going through your assessment of my values hierarchy, the one question that was a repetitive pattern for me that I recognized, you said in part of your assessment that's on the screen right now, again, it's very powerful. I recommend all of you do this if you've been struggling with purpose and values. What came clear for me this morning was I spend a lot of my time in recapitulation and understanding of why does God need to experience God in unlimited ways? What is this all about? And if I become too unconscious, I fall into the illusion that I have to have the answer as to why. That Josh has to know why God needs to experience God's self in unlimited ways. But every single ceremony, every single peak experience I've ever had, I always get to this clarity. It's almost like this peaceful voice that says to me, my son, you don't get to know. You don't get to know. It's this playful authority. It's not judgmental, my experience of moments in deep connection with God. But what is the clarity that you may provide for us here with someone like myself or all of us who struggles with these deep anthropomorphic questions of, God, why do you need to experience yourself in so many unlimited ways?
Oh, we could go down a rabbit hole on that one.
Please.
I was in a movie, I think 2009. It was called Oh My God. And
it's a great title.
Hugh Jackman was there, and David Copperfield, and Seal, and Ringo Starr, Baz Luhrmann, Princess Michael of Kent. A whole lot of interesting characters, let's put it that way. They were asking the question, did man make God or did God make man? Are we made in the image of God? Or are we making God in the image of man and anthropomorphizing?
Yeah.
And in that movie, which I only was a small part of, there was also a book. And there I got to elaborate a little bit on the origins of the constructs of God. You know, an atheist and a theist were debating one time, and the atheist was saying that I am aware of, in history, of about 8,000 gods that have existed on the planet around the world. I don't believe in any of those gods, says the atheist. And then the theist says, well, I believe in one God. And he says, well, the only difference between me and you is I believe in one less God, because you don't believe in those 8,000 that have been around. But what we did in very ancient times, primitive times or prehistoric times, is we had phobias about nature. Phobia of thunder, phobia of lightning, phobia of cold and heat, and phobia of animals and what plants to eat. anything that we had anxiety over and we would create signs and symptoms, we would create something in our brain called a freeze response. If we can't fight it and we can't flight it, we create a freeze response and dissociate and create in our brain the opposite of whatever we're perceiving is happening. This part of the brain, parietal temporal junction area and other areas, this area creates a construct of the opposite of what we're fearing. Whatever our phobia is, we create a philia in our brain, and we can stimulate that part of the brain and think we're actually accessing with hyper-religiosity a God experience. So we have to differentiate our own frailties and our own fears, creating our own fantasies of what God is instead of what God is, which is, we could just call it from a panpsychic perspective, the intelligence that permeates the universe, as Spinoza and Einstein described. We tend to anthropomorphize it and put a box around it and try to make it a finite thing and try to communicate with it with anthropomorphisms because we can't handle the mystery and the majesty of an incomprehensible.
Yes.
So what we do is we create these intermittent levels of awareness, and our construct of God evolves in our teens to our 20s to our 30s to our 40s. Eventually it becomes, as a higher IQ, an abstract mathematical equation of the symmetry and synthesis and synchronicity of all opposites, as Heraclitus described,
yes.
Which is the love of the divine, if you will. Divine meaning light. I mean, ultimately, even at the most subtle level of particle physics, it's light. You know, we can take any particle and antiparticle and generate light out of it. So at the most subtle level, the synthesis synchronicity of complementary opposites make the light, and divinity means divine is diva or light. You think about it, Theos, Dios, Zeus, all those meant light. So we get really down to the mathematics. It's an elegant symmetry of Maxwell's equations sitting and summarized in this permeating universe. And so we can talk to this in our own mind, but it's still a part of our own expression, our own communion, because the divine is not in linguistics of 8,000 languages. It's not localized to one spot in one area at one time in the universe. That would be a very narrow anthropomorphic construct. And before that, it was zoomorphic. Before that, it was plants. And before that, it was rocks. I mean, the evolution of the theology has been quite profound. But eventually it gets to such an abstraction, mathematical abstraction, at the highest level is a unified field theory.
Yes, I realize that even in my question for you, that it is anthropomorphic. I realize it's me wanting to in some way put vernacular or labeling on God. I totally admit that. Yet that part of me, if I'm not careful, can lean into apathy. And I'm sure in the millions of lives that you've touched now, over 50 years, that this question that I'm bringing forth for you and all of us has come up, where I don't know if you've taken people through a live process, but I don't want free coaching from you right now, but I'm curious for me and for all of us that grapple and struggle with this question of, God, why do you need to experience yourself in unlimited ways through rape and murder and challenges for children, just things that if I spend too much time in rumination will cause me to have physical symptomology. It's very unhealthy for me to go there. And I know that, yet I still find myself, John, trapped in these questions of why, God, why?
Theodicy is, how does evil exist? How do you justify evil through God?
Yes.
Theodicy.
Yes.
Leibniz, the German philosopher, wrote Monadology, Theodicy, and the Discourse on Metaphysics. And he believed that there was a perfection in the universe, an ordered universe, and that humans, when they have ignorance and aren't aware of the two sides simultaneously, label things with absolute moralities instead of relativistic, situational ethics. So we go around and we tend to think that something's terrible or something's terrific, and that's the illusion. They're not. They're pairs of opposites. And there's a law that governs them called the law of heuristic escalation. Anytime an ideologue tends to promote an ideal into a society and promotes pro-life, there's a pro-abortion, pro-guns, anti-guns, pro-Trump, anti-Trump. Anytime you have a promotion of a side that you think has got advantage over disadvantage and you're blind to the other side, the law of heuristic escalation in the quantum field automatically initiates the opposite to balance it, to maintain the order. And this occurs. And so the average person who hasn't seen that order still get caught in the labels of this is good and this is bad, that's terrible, this is terrific, and this is because they haven't broadened their mind enough to see both sides simultaneously. So if you ask the question, you will see that even the things that you think are evil have a purpose. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher, said it really nicely. He said, the guy who's the jihadist who wants to go and kill things for the sake of Allah, the extremist, if you will, he's doing what he thinks is good. Where somebody who's now had their life taken, they think he's doing something evil. Which is it? If you subordinate to one anthropomorphic deification, one is good, and if you subordinate to another one, it's evil. I can't make that decision, but I know by the law of heuristic escalation that they're paired and they're simultaneous. And the more you try to make one good, the more the other one comes in to balance you, to teach you, to come off your pride thinking you know. So I'd rather go in. I've had the opportunity to work with people from every imaginable thing, from the rapes and the murders and the killings and you name it. I've seen it. Pedophilia, all of them. I don't come from the idea that they're good or evil. I find that locks people in and creates all kind of emotional drama. And I just like to see is what is the ultimate objective going on here? Look at the dance. What is the other side of the equation? I find sometimes, I first got introduced to that, particularly on a lady at the University of Houston. There were 600 women living in a dormitory, the Moody Towers at the time. Only one woman had been raped out of 600 women, but she got raped 5 times in 1 year. So why is one person getting raped 5 times and why is nobody else getting raped, I asked. I was 21 years old at the time. Why is this one person having 5 rapes and no one else is having rape? And so I had my girlfriend at the time who got to know this lady. I started asking probing questions. Most people didn't ask these questions. They thought it was too sensitive. But if you avoid the issue, you don't learn. So I asked, what's going on? And I found something very interesting. The more we're attracted to innocence, the more we attract the perpetrator. The more we attract looking for protection, the more we attract the aggression. The more we're looking for peace, the more we attract the conflict. The pairs of opposites are inseparable. You know, we try to separate the inseparables, divide the indivisibles, label the unlabellables, polarize the unpolarizables, and name the ineffatables, like God and devil or something. And these are inseparabilities. They're unity of opposites based on the projection of our own moralities and our own limited understanding. So what I was seeing is that the person who's trying to seek out innocence, in this case, we found out that the girl's mother, father, and grandmother were highly religious, trying to keep her virginic and protecting her from all aggressive men. So the more they had the overprotectors, the more the aggressors were coming into her life. And this was a really extreme case of parental and grandparental influence. So I tell people, if you try to make something evil and try to protect something from it, whatever you condemn, you breed, attract, and become, to teach you the lesson, to transcend it. And this allows you to get past the theoretical limits that we have about why evil occurs, because it's not even evil in the first place. It's not even good in the first place. These are the limits that we have in our awareness. There's a pair of opposites, because just like Oprah had something that would be considered pedophilic as a child, but Oprah's become Oprah. It's not what happens to us, it's what we decide to perceive, decide, and act from it. How do we use it to our advantage, these events?
What you just said exactly is my question. The awareness that you're bringing about the opposites, and it's so fascinating too, thinking about this woman got raped 5 times because there was this maybe Pentecostal or dogmatic religion that said we have to protect her. So that energy signature that was put out into the field
needs its balance.
For whatever reason, I was thinking about my children. You met my son before we recorded, and I have this burning desire to protect his innocence. I think about how many tragedies are inflicted upon children that are so heinous and so painful. I think about child trafficking and the things that exist in our world. And I want to do everything I possibly can to protect my son and my daughter from what I would label as evil. Yet it seems like what you're bringing forth is showing me another layer. There's a fallacy that I'm dancing with here? What is that fallacy?
Well, let me see if I can put it in a different context.
Because I have genuine love for my children.
Of course you do.
Yet there's a harmonic point in the center where I can trust that they're protected instead of fighting to protect them.
Those that are searching for God the most are the ones denying God's presence the most, as they say. If God's omnipresent and it's divine perfection, then it's in every action. That's what Einstein was trying to say. But if we go back to elementary school, you might remember science class. I don't know. There was in the front of the class, there was an atom, a hydrogen atom, a helium, a lithium, a beryllium, a boron, right? And it went up the thing all the way to uranium. Each one was progressively a larger little sphere on the little diagrams on the front of the room, if you remember those pictures of atoms.
Yeah.
And there were little boxes in the corner that had little blue and red and white sticks and balls, and you made little molecules by putting these little sticks in these little balls. And so when you're in elementary school, you think an atom is a sphere, little ball, and that there's a bunch of balls that make them. And you see these little DNA pictures of all these little atoms together, and that's all balls. Then you go to high school and you find out, well, it's not so. The Bohr model comes in, and they introduce a little bit more of an abstraction, and you start to think of it like a solar system, that you have a proton and neutron with a little electron going around it. And it's going around these orbitals and gyrating through the orbitals, and it's going to have shells, KLM shells and things. And now you have this new model. The first one was what you had to be taught to get ready for the next level of abstraction. Then you go into college and you start studying quantum theory. And you start to realize that it's the orbitals that you thought were probability distributions. It's a mathematical abstraction by Schrodinger's equation that's based on the probability of an electron actually being there. And even the proton, which is made out of gluons and quarks and mesons, are probability fluctuations in a quantum field. So now you think, well, wait a minute now, that little orbital thing is not really true either. And now it's these quantum fluctuations. And then you go on to get your PhD in physics. And you go, we have problems with renormalization and infinitudes, and we really don't know what that is. It's a quantum fluctuation, but what is that? And what's fluctuating? Is it space and time? Is there gravitational quantum loop gravity sitting there? What exactly is this? And what is light? It's spaceless, timeless, massless, chargeless, and it's interacting between all these particles. We really don't know. It's a mystery, but we tend to know what we know. So we had to be taught the illusion till we're ready for truth. And the Buddha said the same thing. I'll teach my students the illusions till they're ready for truth. So the illusions of morality are of the absolutist, of the narrowest minds, eventually realize a more relative understanding that in different contexts and situational ethics, things have different meaning. So we go through different levels of abstraction as we grow. And that's the journey. And so our moralities evolve. I think if you go to Kohlberg's work, you'll see that there's an evolution to morality from that which is black and white, punishment, reward, absolutist, heaven, hell, good and evil, extreme black and white, to eventually an understanding of the universal laws. Human laws are unobtainable and unsustainable. Universal laws are inviolable. So the question is, do you live your life by universal laws or human mores? And human mores are done by the oppressor over the oppressed, and that you subordinate to somebody that happen to have power and influence. If you're Catholic, it's the Pope. If you're secular, it might be some politician whoever had power and leadership and economics, possibly, maybe a plutocracy giving those rules. But these are just arbitrary things that have come up by individuals, and different cultures have different ones. So I wrote a textbook on morality about 1.5 years ago, big textbook on it, trying to give the evolution of how these things come up in the brain and how the brain is doing it. From the amygdala all the way up to the medial prefrontal cortex through the cingulate gyrus, you're literally evolving your moralities as you go. So if you get caught in the black and white, look again. Discover the upsides to what you think is down and the downs to what you think is up, and trust your intuition to guide you back into homeostasis, because otherwise you're going to be judging somebody, which is you.
I think at the core of this dance for me that I mentioned to you about wanting to protect the innocence of my children versus trusting life, there's a set of questions. And one thing that I love about your work is you are the question master. You have spent 50 years plus asking insanely beautiful questions that get people to a different result, because the better the questions that are asked, the more fruitful life becomes.
Yeah, but the greatest questions are ones that make you fully aware of both sides simultaneously.
Beautiful. So
equanimity.
Then for someone in my construct, in my current level of development, what might be a question or a set of questions that I could ask myself that would allow me to exit the illusion of me thinking that I have to protect and white knuckle the innocence of my children?
Well, that's your own fear, isn't it?
Of course.
So do you want to impose a fear onto your child, or do you want to have him have confidence in his capacity to do extraordinary things?
Confidence and capacity.
My dad, when I was 9, I went to my dad and I said, I'd like to buy a baseball glove, bat, and catcher's mitt, what do you call it? Mm-hmm. And he said, great. So I said, I'd like to earn some money. And he said, have you mowed the yard? Yes. Have you edged the sidewalk? Yes. Have you swept the garage? Yes. Have you done the hedges? Yes. Have you cleaned all the flower beds out? Yes. Have you tightened all the shales on the side of the house? Yes. Have you shined my shoes? Yes. And he went through all my duties around the yard and house and everything else that I had. He said, son, if they're all done, I have nothing that I can pay you for unless you have something that needs to be done that I have as a need. I suggest you go to the neighbors and find out if there's any of those needs any of the neighbors have. So I went 2 doors down to the Evans and I saw an unruly house, yard, and I offered to mow and edge and sweep and do the hedges and the flower beds, everything. Even was willing to clean the garage. And the lady said, well, how much? And I came up with a number. I didn't know what to think, but I just came up with it. And she said, that sounds fair. And I earned really good money that day. And I went and bought my baseball glove and bat. And my dad saw me with a baseball glove and bat, and he says, how did you earn that? And I went to the Evans, and I did their whole yard. He said, well, that's great. What equipment did you use? And I said, well, I did the equipment in the garage. He said, well, I have to charge you for that. That's a depreciation schedule on that. And then, so he calculated that I owed him $7.50. I made $25 out of doing that whole yard. This is 1963. So which was good money in those days. So I had to pay him $7.50. So I had to do a bunch of other yards to pay that. And then I had more to pay from that. And so my dad started making me accountable. And he didn't make it easy on me. He didn't try to protect me. He made me accountable for the realities of what was going on in the world because I had learning difficulties and he knew I better have street smarts. So eventually he said, you keep spending all your money. If you keep spending your money, you will be a slave to money all your life and buy things that go down in value. If you want to actually become free in finances, you need to buy things that go up in value. So he got me a coin collection set and he got me a piggy bank, which I still have in my office today from 1963. It's never been opened. It's worth a fortune today. The original coins that I put in there back in 1963. So he told me that. Then I started to save and I started to get my coin collection and I started doing what he said and I started to feel that there is now money beginning to work for me. I'm now becoming its master. And then he said, well, now I want you to buy your freedom, son. Now you're going to pay $7.50 a week to live at the house. It's going to give you clothes, food, and rent. And you have the freedom, though. You can leave at 5 in the morning. You have to be home at 9 p.m., and that's it. Whatever you do during the day is totally up to you. You're free, man. You bought your freedom. He gave me accountabilities. He also allowed me to learn what it's like to take and buy the bicycle and go 35 miles in a different direction to explore. By the time I was 12 years old, I was hopping trains to cities. In those days, you did that. And hitchhiked, because that was not uncommon back then. So I started hitchhiking to different cities. When I was 14, I hitchhiked across America and down into Mexico. I did things that most people were not doing at that age because he trained me to trust myself. When I would do the hedges, I would go out there and I'd ask him, how does it look? And he said, if you have to ask me, you're not certain. Go back and get the measuring out there, and don't stop until you're satisfied, and then you can tell me how great you did. It's not about my opinion about you. It's about you having absolute certainty that you've done your greatest job. Mm-hmm. So he didn't rescue me. He didn't make it easy on me because you can make somebody juvenilely dependent if you protect him. He made me accountable, and that was the difference. And he made me aware. He educated me. If you walk down the street, there's hobos that live down there. There's a consequence of doing that. Make sure you know the pros and cons before you do things. Educate him.
I get you. I really understand what you're bringing forth. It's not about me white knuckling or putting him in a bubble of protection. It's about
the bubble baby at the the Texas Children's and St. Luke's baby. I was there when they had the bubble baby, and he was overprotected in his immune system, which eventually made him not have any immune system.
Yes. So what I'm getting from you, it's about me instilling virtues and values with my son such that he trusts himself, God, and life.
Or just live it. Einstein said the greatest teacher is exemplification. Live a certain life, an inspired life, a confident life, and he'll learn the most. Trying to tell him what you're wounded by and protect him from your wounds will only bring it into you, into your life through him to make you learn how to be able to find the blessings in what you thought was terrible.
Yes, this is so good. So a larger, more meta question would be the wounds that we've all experienced. Can we see them as actually teaching modes for us?
All we have to do is find out. The wound is nothing more than an incomplete awareness. We're assuming there's a trauma there. We're assuming there's a negative there, but there isn't. There's both sides. We chose to see only the downside.
Yes.
Haven't seen both sides. If you see both sides, there's no wound there, and there's nothing to fear.
The choice that you say, that's the power. That's the power, the choice. So many times in life, people will say, well, this happened to me. And I know this is a reductionistic statement, but I would love more clarity from you. It's not that things happen to Josh. It's that things happen for Josh such that he can understand where he's not free.
That's it.
That is a real, I can feel that in my throat and my body when I share that with you.
You can be a victim of history or a master of destiny. A master of destiny sees things on the way, not in the way.
Yes. So the meta that I'm bringing forth, it happens in ways that keep people held hostage for their lives that then they teach unconsciously.
That's the trap of morality.
Can you expand on this?
Yeah, the morality was designed to keep people under bondage. Ooh, that's a heavy one, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, because we don't realize that. There's a great thing, if you go online, whoever's online, look up Priest Says No Hell. Type that in and look it up under YouTube. Priest Says No Hell. That's the title of the little video.
Okay.
And in there is a gentleman who's a scholar, Catholic scholar, talking about the illusion of good and evil. It's an interesting piece. And he says it's in the guilt-producing control business. It's designed to disempower people because if you strive for that which is unobtainable and try to avoid that which is unavoidable, you're going to feel disempowered because you can't do it. You know, your mom says, now be nice, don't be mean. Be kind, don't be cruel. Be positive, don't be negative. Be peaceful, don't be wrathful. Be generous, don't be stingy. Be considerate, don't be inconsiderate. Be, one-sided. But then your mom turns around 5 minutes later and yells at dad and does just the opposite. These are moral hypocrisies. So I when I studied morality many, many years and even wrote that new text, I try to help people transcend, as Kohlberg described, transcend the limitations of absolutists that are unobtainable. They're basically striving for that which is unobtainable and trying to avoid that which is unavoidable. You're going to be nice and mean in your life to your spouse, to yourself, to your kid, to people, if they support or challenge you in your perceptions. And until you can actually see both sides simultaneously, those are going to oscillate and vacillate, and they're going to take your pride and humble it, and they're going to take your shame and lift it. And they're going to teach you how to love all parts of yourself.
What do you believe identity really is? A lot of my work right now that I'm just fed by, one thing that I love about you is like you've said before, if you get up in the morning and you love what you do, life can just be literally the most dreamy game that you could ever imagine. One thing for me that's lighting me up is this concept of identity and Josh moving through his own identity transformation process. I'm wearing the Philosopher's Stone today. Jung looked at the Philosopher's Stone as the integration of lower, current, and higher self. I'm curious for you, with all of your life experience and your intellect and just your understanding as a man, as a teacher, what do you believe identity truly is? And how might you encapsulate identity transformation, moving from one portion of self to how they identify to the next?
Your identity revolves around what you value most. So let's say you have a mother who's 35, has 3 children under the age of 5, and her dedication is to those kids.
Yes.
Okay. So her highest values are children. If you ask her, who are you ontologically? She asks an ontological question. What is the essence of your being? Who are you? She's going to say, I'm a mother. If you meet an entrepreneur who's running 2 or 3 companies, who may have 3 kids at home with a wife that's a mother, if you ask him, who are you? he's going to first say, I'm an entrepreneur, businessman. Second, children, I'm a father. Because his identity is going to revolve around what he values most. And if he was totally father and she was totally mother, they probably aren't going to have a lot of provisions because he's not business oriented. So they're going to live in a more of an impoverished dynamic. So there's no right or wrong set of values. That's the big illusion that people have, is that these are the right values and these are the wrong values. The spectrum of values across the planet counterbalance each other. For every person that's got a set of values, there's somebody with the opposite set. And you find them and marry them many times.
Yeah,
That's the funny part.
Sure.
You're attracted to your disowned part. So
that's true.
Yeah, that's the entanglement of quantum physics there. So what happens is you have your identity revolving around, your ontological identity revolves around what your highest value is. That's why I have the highest value identification process on my website, free for people around the world.
Yeah. And
millions of people have used it because that's one of the most eye-opening awarenesses you have. And your hierarchy of values are evolving. You know, I wanted to play baseball when I was 3 to 13. I wanted to ride big waves and when I was up to 18, from 13 to 18. 18 till now, I've been a teacher. And I'll probably do that the rest of my existence.
Yeah.
But in the process of doing that, whatever's highest on your value, your identity evolves. So you asked me when I was 3 to 13, I was headed for the big leagues in baseball. I was riding big waves in surf movies when I was 17. And but now I'm an educator traveling the world teaching. So there's an evolution to the values. They can occur gradually or through cataclysmic events. Massive changes can change, but your values are changing. But your identity, every time you have a change in values, you have a change in identity, and your change of identity has blessings and curses with every one of them. There's benefits and drawbacks with every change. So look at what your highest value is, and I'll tell you where your identity is at that moment. Now, the ultimate essence of your being is all-inclusive and includes all those values from everyone. Nothing's missing in you. But that's an abstraction that few people can grasp. So their identity is revolving about what they value most at that moment. And their value, the highest value, the telos, the end in mind, the chief aim, the ultimate objective for each individual at any moment is derived from all the voids of judgments that come from pre-birth, multi-generational epigenetics, gestational epigenetics, and the epigenetics you've had from the time you're born. All of those voids and judgments all give rise to voids. Those voids want to be filled, and the highest fulfillment is the highest value. Your highest value or purpose is the most efficient and effective pathway to fulfill the greatest amount of voids from all the judgments with the greatest amount of value, which is the fulfillment. So our identity is always directed towards the maximum fulfillment of our highest values.
And these highest values, again, I'm going to share this link on the screen, y'all. It's so powerful. Getting clear on values is actually the lens through which we live life through. Yet these values are not taught in school. I don't know if
there's not to be taught. See, the imposition of somebody's values onto somebody else is the illusion.
Well, what I mean is just the actual systematic understanding of how one figures out for themselves what values are.
I developed that 47 years ago when I was 23, that system. And at age 23, I asked the question, why do some people walk their talk, some people limp their life? Why do some people do what they say, others don't? Why are some people flourishing and others floundering? And that led me to the study of axiology, which is a study of value and worth, and Hartman and Schwartz and many of the other people. There was only 12 textbooks on that topic at the time. And so I devoured those, and I realized that something that the Scottish philosopher David Hume was describing is the difference between is versus ought. And I realized that most of the morals is about how you ought to be in society, how you fit in and conform, how you should be. That's not where the power is. The power is what is your values? Your life demonstrates your values. Your hierarchy of values dictates your perception, decisions, and actions, and your identity revolves around what's highest. I want to know what that is. I'm not interested in what it ought to be in society, what it's supposed to be by some religious or political doctrine. I'm interested in who you are, that uniqueness. That's the unborrowed visionary. That's the trailblazing, unique individual that's inspired by a calling inside. That is where human will matches divine will, if you want to call it that. That's where predestination and free will are matched. That's where contingency and necessity, determination, indetermination all join. So I'm interested in that. And that's why I put that together on my website to help people do it. It's free.
Yeah, the authenticity is what I think most people
that's where the power is.
They're craving it. I think there's a real lack because of social media and the rise of artificial intelligence.
Well, we're social media. We're comparing ourselves to other people and putting them on pedestals or pits. We're not here to compare ourselves to other people. We're here to compare our own actions to our own highest values to see how congruent and aligned we are with authenticity.
So it's not about removing social media. It's about
using it wisely,
utilizing a relationship with social media. This is a really great question. How does one in our current modernity, especially 25, 26, 2027, develop a relationship with AI and technology such that we can still maintain our authentic expression of self?
Just like the Zeno and the dialectic, he noticed that they created a dialectic so you could have an argument for something.
And what is a dialectic?
The dialectic is a tool of inquiry through questions and statements.
Mm-hmm.
So you make a proposition that all men are this way, and then somebody comes in with an opposite proposition. No, there are men that are also this way. And so in a debate, you argue and try to make them wrong and you right. But in a dialectic, you try to listen to what they have to say and modify what you're saying until you come to the mean, the synthesis of the thesis and antithesis, the oppositions. So when you're studying and researching, even if it's with AI, it's wise to find the synthesis between the opinions. Whenever you see shoulds and imperatives, should, ought to, supposed to, got to, have to, and must in a writer, you know they're projecting their pride and their assumption about what it's supposed to be onto somebody with a moral hypocrisy that's not going to be obtainable. When you see the people do the opposite, you know that there's the other polarity. And if you study any discipline at all, any discipline, I've studied 300 disciplines, any discipline, you'll find that there's pairs of opposites in beliefs. And for everything that somebody states, there's somebody states the opposite and challenges it. And the dialectic of all those opinions, the synthesis is where you're going to find the logos. The logos, the order, the reason, the plan behind it that they considered Christ. Philo in the 2nd century called Christ the Logos because of Heraclitus, because he represented the synthesis in the Christian teachings, the equanimity, not the inequities of the polarities of judgment. He was the loving being, you might say, symbolically. So finding that synthesis is the key in AI, just like any research, because you're going to get an opinion, and it's an hypothesis, and then you're going to get an opposite hypothesis, and eventually a synthesis occurs. And that's what you strive for, the synthesis and synchronicity of all opposites.
It seems like there's ultimate freedom in not just seeing both sides, but in accepting both sides.
Appreciating both sides. Because accepting assumes that there's something to accept instead of something to appreciate.
This is a master.
To tolerate. I'm not interested in tolerating and accepting things. I'm interested in appreciating where they play in the big scheme.
This is a masterclass in self-awareness and consciousness because I look at my own journey of where I came from. I was sharing with you that I had certain things that have happened for me in life that were challenging, but those challenges brought forth this beautiful fruit. I mean, building a podcast studio on my land and having a wife and children, these are all things that I dreamed of when I was in my deepest moments of pain. But the ultimate paradox that maybe is part of what you're sharing today in the not just acceptance of the sides, but in the astonishment and in the gratitude for both sides existing.
That's it.
That is actually the fuel substrate that brought me here to speak with you. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, when I was deep in my addiction, when I was broke, when I had really nothing to share with the world, so I thought, that I'd be sitting here with Dr. John Demartini on my land, reaching hundreds of thousands of people, I might have not believed you because I couldn't grok what you're bringing forth then, but I can grok it now. I can understand and I can start to assimilate and digest what you're bringing forth. If you were to wave a magic wand for people that are potentially having trouble digesting what you're bringing forward, is there any simplicity or elegance you can bring to them, not in just the acceptance of these sides, but in the astonishment of these sides?
Reflect, look at your life. Imagine a drone videotaping you every day for 3 months. And then knowing that if somebody could edit out a hero and a villain out of you, they could take moments of pleasure and pain and positive and negative and kind and cruel and nice and mean you will find that there's nothing missing in you. And then you'll realize that the pride of trying to get rid of half of yourself will be futile. I ask people in my seminar, the Breakthrough Experience, my signature program, which I've done 1,256 times. I ask people, tell me something you've been trying to get rid of and try to minimize and lessen in your life. And they write them down. I said, now write down when you last did them, honestly. And they go, I still do them. I said, you're never going to get rid of any part of yourself. That's the illusion. And you don't need to gain some part. Now write down something you wish you could have and then more of. And now where is it already in your life? The only reason you're not recognizing is because you're comparing it to somebody else and you're thinking it should be in their form. And it's not in their form, it's in your form. You're not missing it. So gaining something or losing something is not where the answer is. I always say that the master lives in a world of transformation, never the illusions of gain and loss, because they're caught in a trap of a polarity of moral hypocrisies. So giving yourself permission to look and discover that is liberating, because you're trying to get rid of something you never get rid of, and that's futile, and it's non-sustainable. And you spend all this dissipative energy because of lack of information, the missing information. You spend all this dissipative energy with entropy and aging. Aging is a byproduct of all that missing information. Aging is a symptom that our body creates to let us know when we're lying about the magnificence of our life and not seeing the whole and not honoring that we're all the above. Om Tat Sat, all of it. As I said, I'm not a nice person or a mean person or a kind person or a cruel person. I have all of those in different settings, and I don't need to get rid of any of them, and I don't need to gain something. They're all there, and they all have a place and a moment. And if you look really carefully, you'll find out that when you're nice to somebody else is being mean. And when you're mean to somebody else is being nice, and you're part of a matrix. You're part of a loving matrix. That's why the law of heuristic escalation in chaos theory has been observed in social structures, because you're participating in it. And we can see it. If you really ask the question, you can see it on the news. You can see it everywhere. The more they try to eliminate something, the more you breed it. Because you're basically in this idea that I've got to get rid of that terrible thing. But that's exactly what the parents were doing with the lady that got raped 5 times.
Yeah.
That was the point.
You mentioned the word matrix, a very popular movie, very popular series. If we are in a matrix of which you speak, however you want to describe it, the ultimate freedom within the matrix is a set of questions and a set of perceptions that we can see life and live life and experience life through. Is there a beginning question for somebody that feels caught in the matrix?
Anytime you have an emotion, you have an incomplete awareness. If you're not in a state of, everybody in their life has had moments where they have tears of gratitude and an aha eureka moment where they have gamma synchronicities and a gestalt in the brain, and the autonomics are balanced and the brain waves are alpha, theta, and gamma.
Yes.
And that state is a confirmation of authenticity. And it's an awe-inspiring, fulfilling moment where you have pleroma, fullness. Anytime you have an emotion, seek or avoid pleasure or pain, positive or negative, any polarity whatsoever is an incomplete awareness. So I use my awareness of the polarities to ask the question, where is the side I'm overlooking? Where is the ignorant side? Your intuition is constantly trying to reveal it. If a woman meets a guy and she's all infatuated with a guy and she's really drawn to him, she's got an intuition in her side. Don't be gullible. Don't rush this thing. Be patient. Take your time. Keep your eyes open for the downsides. Her intuition is a homeostatic mechanism of the brain that's trying to keep the excitation and inhibition ratios in the brain in balance to try to help her not be gullible to one side.
Yeah.
Don't make love with them the first hour. Give it a couple hours, So what happens, that infatuation and fantasy that she builds that comes from the amygdala that she wants to consume this individual is a sign of ignorance. It's a sign of lack of understanding. People who are more mature would have a broader, more objective view about people. But if not, we're infatuated or resentful. And so heroes and villains and saints and sinners and the moral hypocrisies of one side or the other and labels we put on people are incomplete, and they create an emotion to let us know it. And listening carefully to those emotions to let us know what questions to ask. If we're resentful, what are the upsides? If we're infatuated, what are the downsides? If we're attracted, if we're proud, where were the things I've overlooked? If we're ashamed, where are the things I'm doing that I'm overlooking that's up? I bring myself back into balance, and I have self-governance, and that's the executive functioning, keeping an objective view with reason instead of the affections and passions of the emotions of the animal nature, which is subcortical.
It's very challenging, I'm sure, when you get asked a question like this, or maybe it's not. And my intention with this last question is not to reductionize your work or paint you into a corner, because I think that's impossible with what you're doing. But I do have a human question for you, a mental question. And it is, if you were bringing forth a life-changing truth to the world through your work that gets to be digested and embodied by society, what would be one truth, life-changing truth that you're bringing to the world?
There's nothing but love. All else was an illusion. Love's the synthesis, synchronicity of all opposites, including life and death, positive and negative, good and evil. Love's still there. If we ask the right question, the quality of our life is based on the quality of the questions we ask. If we ask questions that equilibrate the mind and bring equanimity to the mind, our heart opens and we see this magnificence. And then we realize there's nothing to fix. There's a divine perfection, if you want to use theological language,
yes,
or the hidden order, if you want to use Bohm's idea, or the implicate order, as he called it. If you want to use the perfection by Leibniz, or you want to call it the unity of opposites, the logos, or you want to call it the synthesis of all opposites. If you want to call it enlightenment, I don't care what the name is. Philosophers and theologians and mystics over the years have given many, many names to this beautiful state. That's what's here, but we don't see it because we're trapped in the moral hypocrisies and the polarities of the amygdala. And our journey is moving from the amygdala to the executive center through time and going from that which is concrete and what was to something that's more abstract. That's our IQ and EQ development.
I had a moment once in a ceremony. I don't know. Do you ever explore breath work, psychedelics, anything like that in your life?
I did psychedelics in the 60s and 70s, early 70s, and breath work I started back in 1972, and I still use breath work.
These can be peak experiences for many of us. I'm neither for nor against plant medicines or entheogens, but I had a moment once, John, that speaks to exactly what you said and is a beautiful way to close our chapter here. Until the next exciting chapter. Love speaking with you. I know we all have loved this. I saw this moment where we were in a book. You and I are just on a page in a book, and it goes back transcendent of time, and it goes forward transcendent of time. And we're just writing our chapters here with our own free will, with the questions we ask, with the life that we live, with the love that we're able to give and receive. And I can feel the gratitude right now for the fact that I even get to be here speaking with you about it. We're so fortunate. We're so fortunate to be here at this time. Yet the trouble that I experience and many of us experience is that we forget that gratitude. We forget to be in the gratitude that we exist, that we have a creator, that we were created, therefore we have a creator. Could you give any parting guidance to what I'm experiencing in this moment with you?
Well, grace. There's two types of gratitude. Superficial gratitude when somebody does what you like. You go, thank you, thank you.
That's not the gratitude I feel.
The grace
Yeah.
is when you see the hidden order and you are having fullness and your gamma synchronicities bring the tears of gratitude and you're having a moment of authenticity and you're not superior or inferior. You're not seeking or avoiding. You're just honoring what is as it is. Yeah. I have a ritual that I do daily. And believe it or not, I did this because I knew I was leaving this morning. Last night, I typed into my gratitude journal that I was going to have this opportunity to be with you today. So it's in my journal. I do a journal. It's 9,600 and something pages right now of gratitudes every day. Because if you document what you are in a state of grace about, you tend to increase the probability of seeing this hidden order more frequently because it's a training, just like anything else.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean the hidden order is embracing both sides of an event. And that's, most people are trained, avoid this, seek this is good, this is bad, everything else. And they will never experience that grace state. They'll be having that superficial, thank you, screw you. The vacillating, oscillating emotions. But that grace state is when you actually get a glimpse of what's actually there. And I like to think of it, we live in an infinite universe with an infinite variety of experiences of these pairs of opposites. And it's all scales of existence from the quantum level to the astronomical level, the observable level and beyond. And that's for eternity, possibly. We may actually have the capacity to continually experience an ever greater awareness, micro, macro, of these pairs of opposites simultaneously and get to have appreciation of the love that's actually present.
Mm. So choose wisely.
Keep your eyes open.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
In your home state of Texas. Dr. John Demartini, thank you for being my guest. Obviously, people can just type your name into Google or anywhere online and find you. But is there one place that you feel called to send people? Would it be the values hierarchy that they can do for free?
Yeah, if they go on my website, drdemartini.com, there's a determine your values. You'll find it.
Yeah.
Take the time to do it really honestly with yourself. Take 30 minutes of your time to go through these 13 questions. And then if they would like to explore the mysteries a little bit deeper, come to the Breakthrough Experience. That's a mind-bending, life-altering experience for most people.
Sign me up. On the screen right now is my determination snapshot. 33% expanding consciousness, 33% experiencing wealth, and 33% feeling alive. I'm sure this is obviously going to be an ongoing process, but to me, that feels right.
Well, your life demonstrates your values. If you are looking through a drone's eyes where you can't argue with what you're seeing, if it's demonstrating what we say is our values, then it's our values. Our life demonstrates them.
Thank you for being my guest. Share this podcast. It is worthy of sharing. I can't tell you how many hundreds of people have written in and said, this conversation reshaped my reality, or it changed my life, or it made me have greater healing in relationship. These conversations, the reason why I think on earth so many of us are pulled to these long form conversations is because there's nowhere to hide. You really get to know somebody in the hour and 15 minutes we've spent. I really feel like I know you on a deeper human level. And the person that I feel like I know is really worthy of sharing. So thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you.
Y'all share this podcast and make sure that you go to liberatedlife.com. We're talking about more of John's work there as well. And I bid you peace because, gosh, the only way that I can live my life is from having peace, and then comes power. So I'm wishing you love, wellness, but most importantly, peace and power. I don't believe we can have true power unless it comes from peace. We'll talk with you next week.